This is a podcast that everyone should watch if you want to build your own business or start a new venture. Rathin Shah from Spenny talks about his entire journey of figuring out what he wants to do in his life, right from his early startup days in college and then going on to work in JPMorgan and then going on to find his true calling, trying out a bunch of different things and then focusing on building his startup Spenny from scratch and to where it is right now, hiring people, getting accepted in YCombinator, finding his co-founder, building the MVP, how he got his first users. This is going to be a mind-blowing episode for all of you who's trying to build a startup from scratch. Spenny is an app that you can use with which you can round off your payments and invest the spare change into particular assets. That could be mutual funds, that could be crypto, that could also be gold. So this is the application that Rathin Shah has built, and in this episode he talks about his entire journey of going from 0 to 1. Make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe, and let's hear it from Rathin Shah. Hi Rathin, how are you?
Good, Ishan. How are you?
I'm good too, bro.
Yes.
Really enjoying the Bangalore space. Amazing place.
Yeah. How long has it been? 3-4 days for you?
3-4 days. It's amazing. Tell us about you. How was your journey from graduating from BITS? You are from Goa campus, Pilani campus? Goa campus.
Yes.
So coming from BITS Goa, what was the journey like and how did we get here? To you opening Spenny and going on to your entrepreneurial path. How did that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it's a long and wonderful journey, but I'll break it down into parts. So I think there are 3 phases to the story mainly. The first phase is me exploring entrepreneurship for the first time, or at least getting in touch with what startups are or entrepreneurship is. And this goes back to 2011, my first year in BITS Goa.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a small town called Vapi. It's in the south of Gujarat, and it's a place where people generally do traditional businesses. Startups and entrepreneurship aren't really the buzzwords there, essentially. And I enter BITS Goa, and suddenly there's this environment of entrepreneurship, and there's this club called CEL, the Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, which is something that I joined. And that sort of opened my sort of doors to all these things like startups and all of these things. Mm-hmm. And that's when I decided, yeah, this is interesting, we can look into this. And is probably about the time when I really liked a girl and I wanted to impress her. So in my genius mind, I thought the best way to impress a girl is to co-found a startup with her. Right. Absolutely disaster of a formula. I should never do that. I do not recommend this to anyone. But again, that is what got me started. And for me, I think the most important part was that I actually found my joy, like the joy in actually creating a company, and that the thrill and that fun and passion of following something, or taking up a dream, just putting it on paper, and then one day sort of converting that into an actual business. And then you realize how different it is from the actual one, or the ones that we had thought. But that entire journey, it's incredible. And although that first particular startup, so I did something essentially, I started my first ever startup that was in first year was, it was renting of high-end fashion designer clothes. Something what Rent the Runway does now. But back in 2011, that was a very innovative idea. 10 years, I'm talking about 11 years earlier. And so back then it was like an innovative idea. Except, there's 2 problems. One, I didn't know anything about fashion or anything about renting. So, not a good idea.
But you knew one thing, and that is your crush.
Yes, exactly. So neither the girl worked out nor the startup. But
कुछ भी नहीं हुआ.
But one thing that worked out, which I had not planned for, was my love for startup had evolved. It had actually grown basically, and that's how it started. And it was incredible because I knew that यार ये कभी ना कभी करना है life. That was the beginning genesis of this entire story. So yeah, post that it almost became a game. कि यार हर साल we used to, like, me and my friends would sit down, we're like, okay, क्या startup idea करना है, and it was almost a game. Every year we're going to start a new company and just try and see if we can put it to practice, etc. By the 3rd year, we got a little more serious about it. And the 3rd year was when I actually started with a couple of my friends one of the first actual legit ventures. It was called RecoPro. It was backed by backed by the government of India as well, plus the BITS Pilani trust as well.
What was it about?
Yeah. So RecoPro, essentially, the idea was to reduce cutting down of trees. And the way to do it was basically wood was required in a lot of products, logistic based products, especially wooden pallets. Now, since Goa is a port, you would if you go near the port, you'll see a lot of broken pallets. Pallets are basically wooden platform like structures over which you keep like 2,000, 3,000 kilos of goods, and it's used to transport goods from one place to another in shipping industry basically. Now, what happens is that these pallets have a certain life. Uske baad, they are just discarded, and then you cut new trees again, and then the whole process repeats. The issue with that is that it requires cutting down of a lot of trees around the globe because of this product. So we realized that if we can replace wood with recyclable paper, such that you don't need to cut the trees again and again, and if you can make that recyclable paper pallets as strong and sturdy as the wooden pallets, then we have a product on our hands. So that was the idea, RecoPro. Essentially, we made recyclable paper pallets basically.
Awesome. फिर क्या हुआ?
So then third year when we started this, I mean we did that very religiously. We had a few clients as well, some based in Goa, some based in different parts of India. It was a manufacturing product startup, so obviously it was slightly difficult to manage from the campus, but we managed to do it anyway. By the fourth year, we had also been to the NVC course, New Venture Creation by BITS Pilani. Probably a game changer course for us at least. Gave us a lot of direction. So basically we did that. But then at the end of fourth year, we had this perennial question: कि यार startup continue करना है या job करनी है? And at that time, that's the kind of question which really tests your mettle and actually tests how courageous you are. And to be honest, and just being very frank, that we weren't very courageous. Clearly, we didn't have the balls at that time to actually pursue our startup. Unlike say you or the various other startups that are coming out of this Goa. So I mean, so at that point it was like, all right, let's just take up jobs. So I liked finance, and so I wanted to pursue finance, and I got a job with JPMorgan in the investment banking division. So I joined JPMorgan in India, Mumbai, basically. So yeah, so that sort of RecoPro was put on hold. Joined JPMorgan. Worked there for a couple of years, first in India. I was there for a short stint in London as well. And then I quit my job, came back to India, and after a couple of years, the sole purpose was I really wanted to get back into startups. And so, I quit my job, came back to India, and started working on RecoPro once again. But the point this time was that my co-founders didn't come back because they pursued some like other interests. And so for me, it was like restarting the whole thing, but this time I was pretty much a solo founder basically. So yeah, but then this time I did it full time. RecoPro for 2 years, ran RecoPro completely. Had a lot of learnings and pitfalls, and it was a great journey. At the end of which, basically that sort of company, we sort of sold it to another manufacturing company in Gujarat.
That's cool. What is the lifestyle at an investment banking firm like JPMorgan?
Yeah, so JPMorgan is it's a very high performance lifestyle. Essentially, extremely high working hours. You have to be very efficient with output, and obviously, as with anything which relates to either banking or consulting or law, etc., all of these sort of white collar jobs, you have obviously a lot of high working hours, but at the same time, you need to be very sharp in what you're working at. So I really got trained there, and to be honest, I was very lucky to have a very solid set of team members and managers who were very supportive. And pretty much whatever I learned in my professional life, the discipline that I get in my work, the attention to detail, everything taught there. So for me, it was more like a finishing school, and essentially the place where I learned my finance as well as my professional working life ropes. So yeah, I credit JPMorgan for a lot of that.
The work ethic that you were able to create.
100%.
I credit IIT JE for the work ethic that I was able to create.
Right. Yeah, no, I guess that's one way to use your IIT JE prep.
That's what it is supposed to teach us.
Yes.
It's not about what college you get into, it's more about did you develop that discipline to sit here, learn a concept, and solve 100 problems on top of it.
Correct, yeah.
Right? So that's what it's supposed to actually do.
Makes sense.
Yeah, bro.
Absolutely.
So once you sold the company, what happened to your life?
Yeah. All right. So just during those 2 years, also it was very weird. Running RecoPro, which was my first time experience of running a startup full time, was nothing like I had imagined, to be honest. Because I mean, at the sound of at the risk of sounding cliche, it was like for a lot of time it was just me trying to sort of do something and try to reach an end goal which didn't exist. And so by that what I mean is that I had a certain vision of where the company should be and how the product should be like. But when you put it into practice, I realized it's nothing like that. I made a ton of mistakes. And given that it was a hardware product startup, the mistakes, the results of those or the implications of the mistakes that you make are compounded 10x as opposed to a startup wherein you can quickly adapt and change, etc. And so while those mistakes were pretty glaring, I think that taught me a lot during those 2 years. And more or less, at least for the first year and a half, it was pretty difficult because at certain points in time, I was actually running another startup to support my first startup, which is essentially is basically trying to do travel itineraries and charge like 5,000 rupees per travel itinerary and sell it to people. Get those 5,000 rupees with the idea being that if I can get about 25,000 rupees a month, then that becomes my income with which I support few of the laborers' salaries. So I used to do this side project to support this main thing, and there's like a lot of things going on at that time. But then again, that was a great ground sort of for me to get trained about all of these things. तो सही था, काफी मजा आया. And at the end of those 2 years, then my lifestyle was that once I sold the startup, उसके बाद it was not anything like how you would imagine if somebody sells a startup. Essentially, I didn't make a lot of money.
You were not chilling in the Bahamas.
I was not chilling in the Bahamas. I was not partying in the yachts. I was not doing all of those cool things that ex-founders should do.
And he was still single.
Burn kar diya. So this has taken a very interesting turn now to the conversation. तो क्लियरली समझ आ गया कि रेकोप्रो क्या बोलते हैं, पैलेट बनाना कूल नहीं है. So during once all of this thing happened, I realized that ठीक है, this is I need to do something else. At the end of रेकोप्रो, my number one question in my head was कि यार स्कूल हो गई, कॉलेज हो गया, स्टार्टअप एक जॉब भी हो गई और एक स्टार्टअप भी हो गया. जो चीजें ऐसे जो सोची हो सकती है वो सब कर ली. Now the question was what next or what now and what do I really want to do in life, and this is where the second part of the story starts. And this was for me, I think, the turning point in my life. If there's one inflection point that I credit to everything that I've done post that is to this point, because at that point I thought कि यार the biggest question I had was कि ये सब तो ठीक है but main life में करना क्या है. And it's a wonderful question of how it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the age of a person. It's at the phase of the life that you are in. That question may be for you at 21, 20. It may be for me at 24, 25. It may be for somebody at 30. Doesn't really matter. But it's that phase in life when you have this question कि यार I question everything from the base level. Okay, we did school because school was very structured.
First principle approach.
Exactly. You did college because college was very structured. You didn't really apply your own thoughts to it. You did a job because ठीक है, उसके बाद तो जॉब करते हैं लोग.
Basically your life has been running on like an
autopilot. It was everything was autopilot up until this point, and then now I'm suddenly very free. Okay, oh my god, the world is your oyster. But also that means कि how the fuck do you figure out कि what do you want to do, man?
That's what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, because there's like 20 things that you can do.
Right.
That okay, yes, you can do 20 things, but what are you going to actually do? And that became an impounding question in my head. So much that it was kept hammering me every morning, every night, literally every second of my being. And so the voice became louder and louder and louder to the point that I could not ignore it anymore. And then I'm like, okay, let me just get rid of everything else, not do anything else, and just focus on answering this question first. And do that full time. Don't take up any job, don't take up any startup, nothing else until I figure the answer to this question. So that was then the search for this question began. And so yeah, that was sort of my start of the second part of the story. And then what happened was essentially I had meanwhile during the phase of me selling the company and all that, I had applied to MBA across few universities across the world. I'd gotten into a couple of good universities, and I decided that I will go to NCR University. So much that I had
Harvard as well.
Got into Harvard as well. And for me, basically, I had even paid the first, like the initial fees to NCR, which is like to reserve the seat, you need to pay around 8 lakh rupees or so. And so I'd already paid that also. And so for me, it was like, all right, I have this thing. Now I had about 10 months before joining, because you get your admission before in the previous year. So I had about 10 months before I had to join. And I said, okay, fine. I now have this 10 months. I'm going to use those 10 months as my experimental ground in which I try to figure out the answer to that question. That was the whole goal. And so I said, okay, how do I start? Like, this seems like a very big thing to actually even start answering. So I started doing it the only way I know, which is whenever I'm faced with an extremely big task, which I don't know the head or tail or where to start, I'm like, okay, cool, okay, let's just write down the objective and let's start with the knowns. Okay, these are the things I know. These are the things I want to reach, and then you just try and fill in the blanks and just get started with the best thing that you know. Then we'll figure out. I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not, but that's the best thing I know at that moment, and that's how we start.
Right.
So what I did was that I moved to Mumbai, and I decided, all right, I'm going to make a list of all the things that I've ever wanted to do.
Right.
That was step one, and just be very honest with myself. And my promise to myself was that I will not share this list with anyone. The reason to do that was because I wanted to get my friends' voices off my head. I wanted to get my parents' voice off my head. I didn't want to have any influence on me. We are consuming so much content on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube these days that you don't know if this thought is your original thought or it's fed to you by somebody else. You think that it is your original thought. You don't know that. And it's very hard to differentiate between the two. तो यार उस टाइम पे वही था कि यार तो ठीक है ये सब I really want to be my own voice right now. And it was very hard to shut down all the other voices. And the best way to do it was I literally did that. In the sense, I went inside a room and shut down the door. Shut the door, switch off the internet, switch off everything, set a timer, take a blank paper, basically white piece of paper, take a pen, and just pen and paper, old school, must ekdam, just write down everything that you feel that you can be.
Right.
That's it. And I literally did that. Step one was just I wrote down and I created a list of almost 50-60 things, by the way. It was a list where I decided to be extremely shameless. Just write down everything that you can potentially think of.
Right.
For example, let's say a professional skydiver. Okay, why not? Just write it down. Professional footballer. Okay, why not? Just write it down. Just write down every possible thing that you can think of. That was step one. Then the step two was just be a little more practical and remove the things that you definitely cannot be. For example, you cannot be a professional footballer when you're making this list at say 23 or 4 or 5, whatever. Basically, any age. Say if you want to be a professional footballer, you need to be playing at that level at say 17, 18 already. And so if you are 24, it's already super late. So that thing is off the list. So you remove all the things which were, practically not possible. That narrows down your list a little. And then you add this small one more element. What things do you really enjoy out of these? And what things can you actually make at least a little money out of? Like you define your lifestyle. Listen, money is important to me. And I want to make this much amount of money. तो रोकड़ा कमाने का. तो the point is कि कौन सी चीज में तुम्हें थोड़ा पैसा मिलेगा. So that's the thing that you need to cherry pick.
This is similar to Ikigai.
Similar to Ikigai, exactly. That the center of all those 6 circles, etc. Similar to that. And so I narrowed that down list furthermore, and I basically came down to the 6 things. And then the idea was कि ठीक है, now I've narrowed it down logically as much as I can go. इससे ज़्यादा पढ़ के या किसी से experience सुन के या फिर मतलब just by reading things, I'm not going to narrow it down any further. I've come down to the 6 bare bones things essentially. Then came the action time.
Right.
Then my idea to me the best way to do it was execute all of these, like do it as if you were a full-time that person and do it for at least a month. So few of the things that I listed were, one of the things on my list was stand-up comedy, because I loved stand-up comedy so much. I'd been following it for so long, and I just love watching stand-up comedy, and I have always wondered why can't I just why can't I just perform? Like,
Right.
how difficult would it be? So the basically narrator, it was extremely difficult and I sucked at it, but that's a side note. But for me it was like, yeah, try to karna ek baar. So stand-up comedy was one of the points. Then the second one was music. I had been professionally trained in tabla for almost 16 years. With like, I actually hold a degree in tabla, and so for me it was like, okay, theek hai, can I pursue music full time? And then one of the things was, obviously startup was there. One of the things was travel blogging, because I wanted to travel blog, etc. And I mentioned all these 6 things in a list, and I decided I'm going to try do one activity for a month,
Right.
full time, and then see how this goes basically. So yeah, that's what I did for the next 6 months. I picked up one thing. I actually did that. So for example, I created a blog on my travels across Europe. I solo traveled across Europe for like 30 days. So I created a blog on that. I created a lot of music videos for the next month, put it up on YouTube and performed at a bunch of places. I literally did stand-up comedy, so I wrote jokes in the morning, and then went to open mics, performed in Mumbai and Bangalore in open mics. Even opened for people like Biswa at one point. So basically, it was great actually performing and doing all of these things in person. And I did that, and the way I used to do it was, for 1 month, take one activity, do it for like 28 days,
Right.
and then last 2 days use it for journaling everything and figuring out कि ठीक है इसमें मैंने कितना अच्छा किया, कितना बुरा किया, and self-analyzing those things, and then figuring out कि ठीक है, this is what I want to do, this is what I not want to do, etc. So yeah, that is how I proceeded with the entire process. And at the end of that entire 6 to 8 months journey, I decided, okay, at this point, I realized what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, what I can pursue, what I can't pursue, and that's how I figured out, okay, this is what I want to do right now. Yeah.
That is how Spenny came to be.
Yeah, no. So this is how I realized I want to get into startups once again. So basically, I want to pursue startups full time.
Right.
That is what I realized. And then Spenny was like part 3 of the story, which is like, now that I've realized that मेरे को ये करना है, I was pretty much about 3 days before I had to fly for INSEAD. My flight tickets, my visa, everything had arrived, and I was like, I told my parents कि देखो ये तो नहीं हो रहा, and I really didn't want to do my MBA, and so what I did was I'd applied to a couple of I'd applied to EF, Entrepreneur First, and I'd actually applied to EF in Bangalore first. So EF is a startup accelerator which helps you find a co-founder and helps you fund your startup idea basically.
Right.
So I'd applied to EF in Bangalore, but they had actually rejected my application, saying that the managing director at EF Bangalore at that time, and she specifically mentioned this to me in their interview, that Rathin, I don't think you are ready for startups yet. I think you should take up a corporate job or something for some time.
Right.
And I was like, and for me it was like, I'm saying this right now with like this kind of a very like in a jovial way, but at that time I was under a lot of stress because I really did not want to take up a huge loan and go to INSEAD and then pay off that loan, and because for me it was like, if I take up a loan and go to INSEAD, I'll pursue my MBA. After that, I'll work for a few years to repay the loan and then sort of get back into startups. So tab tak I'll be like 30 and I'll waste all my 20s. And so I had like the impending doom. It's like, no dude, I can't go there. And the only other way out was if I had some sort of a guarantee of wherever I was going to go regarding the startup. So I would really want to get into EF.
Right.
And when I had applied to EF and I got rejected, it really broke my heart. And then I was like, literally while I was coming out of the interview of EF Bangalore, where I was told that I'm not ready for startups, I applied to EF Singapore, EF London, EF Hong Kong, all other EF centers across the globe.
Right.
And I got a call from EF Singapore, and I interviewed with them, and they said, all right, fine, this seems like an interesting profile, but what you need to do is essentially, we are full for this cohort. You can join the next cohort, which is like 6 months later. And I said, listen, no, I cannot do that, because my my INSEAD thing is going to start in like 3 days. I'm supposed to leave in like 3 days, and I'm like, I cannot wait until the next 6 months, because what am I going to do until then? And at that point, it might be too late already. And I tell all of this to the interviewer, and he was kind enough, and he said, all right, fine, let me do one thing. I'll just speak with my manager, and let's set up a call tomorrow.
If only the BITS admin was that cool.
Yeah. Well, I hope BITS learns a lesson after you become a billionaire and they can't call you an alumni.
They
anymore.
will call me an alumni.
Yeah. So this is simple logic, right? If you are successful, they'll call you an alumni. If you're not successful, then they won't call you an alumni. You're just another dropout.
Right.
So yeah. Right. So the next morning, I gave the best pitch of my life, and I told them, "Listen, this is my life situation, and this is what I really want to do, and you can save me by actually accepting me into this cohort. Please do that." And I was literally pleading, almost pleading, and then it was pretty much the best pitch I've ever given. And he was like, "Fine, let me see." And then they got back to me saying that, "All right, fine, we can do this. You're on waitlist right now. If somebody drops out, then we'll take you in." And fortunately, somebody did drop out, and I did get in. And so I called my mom dad the next day कि देखो ऐसा कि मैं जाने वाला था INSEAD पेरिस लेकिन अब मैं जा रहा हूँ सिंगापुर. And their whole point is what the fuck is happening with this? Because you have to remember that
mood swings हो रहे हैं अभी इतनी late.
Dude, because you have to remember that the last 10 months what I've done. मैं एक महीने में बोल रहा था कि यार मैं स्टैंड अप कॉमेडी कर रहा हूँ, नेक्स्ट महीने मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि मैं ट्रैवल ब्लॉगिंग कर रहा हूँ, उसके नेक्स्ट महीने में बोल रहा हूँ कि मैं म्यूजिक परस्यू कर रहा हूँ.
पेरेंट्स बोलेगा क्या
So my parents are like ये सटिया गया, ये पागल हो गया, ये मेंटल हो गया, इसको कुछ करो मतलब.
Give me what you're smoking.
Yeah. So my parents are like कि and out of concern than anything else, their point was that कि ये सब छोड़ तू please आजा family business join कर ले. बोला नहीं वो तो नहीं करूँगा मैं. And so for me it was more like also to just prove a point, not just to them but also to myself कि यार ठीक है ये हो सकता है.
You can build something from scratch.
From scratch, exactly. And so ठीक है. And then I went to Singapore, and as the turn of events would be, we were one of the first companies from EF Singapore to get into Y-Combinator. And while we were going from Singapore to SF, we had a stop in Bangalore. And our managing director of Singapore, EF Singapore, called the EF Bangalore's managing director and told him that, by the way, 2 of my boys are coming from Singapore cohort to Bangalore. Please give them office space for a couple of days and they'll be flying to YC. So we were in Bangalore, we were using the EF Bangalore office, and the same person who had interviewed me for EF Bangalore, who had rejected me basically, walked in the room and then asked me just casually, "Hey, why did you guys apply to India?" And I said, well, I did apply to India. I got a comment saying I'm not good enough, and then it was funny. That whole situation was pretty funny. But yeah, so that's how sort of I got into EF.
Awesome. So at that point, did you have an idea of Spenny or what you want to build?
Yeah. So now that is where the third part of the story begins, which is the entire journey about Spenny. At that point, we didn't really have an idea. In fact, I didn't even know Gaurav, who is my co-founder. At that point, I just went to EF Singapore with the sole purpose that यार कुछ करेंगे. कौन सी फील्ड में वो भी ज़्यादा पता नहीं था. Except I knew that I had a background of finance, and I was excited about the fintech space always.
Right.
So wanted to build something in fintech. But beyond that, there was pretty much an open playground. And so I spoke with a lot of potential founders, and I met Gaurav there. Gaurav is an incredible sort of co-founder, and he basically has a background in engineering. He was one of the senior software developers at Ixigo for many years there. Post that, he was like a specialist freelancer for Apple and Netflix, and he's also been the CTO of previous YC companies also. So he was one of the perfect person for this, and plus he had a sort of this thing inclination to build in fintech, and so which was a perfect match for me. And so when we sort of started discussing about potential ideas, all of the ideas just naturally revolved around fintech, and that's when we knew that we want to build something in fintech.
What's interesting about your story is that you just wanted to build a startup in fintech.
Yeah.
You didn't have an idea and you just went in.
Yeah.
While most other people, what they do is they sit and wait of an idea for them to come up with, and then they'll think something about that, right?
Yeah.
So that's something interesting.
Yeah. What I've realized, to be honest, is there's no real फॉर्मूला फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल कि यार इस तरीके से स्टार्टअप बनना चाहिए, उस तरीके से बनना चाहिए. कुछ लोगों को प्रॉब्लम होती है, वो लोग वो प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करते हैं, स्टार्टअप बन जाता है उसमें से. कुछ लोगों को स्टार्टअप बनाना है और फिर वो खोजते हैं प्रॉब्लम, वो निकल जाते हैं. कुछ लोग के पास प्रॉब्लम है नहीं. स्टार्टअप इज लेट्स से इफ इट्स अ कन्वीनियंस प्रोडक्ट और लग्जरी प्रोडक्ट फॉर एग्जांपल, it doesn't mean that you have a problem that you're solving essentially. Maybe just making somebody else's life easier by just creating a more convenient product. Say for example, I mean, you take any luxury product, who really needs a luxury product? As in, you're not really solving a problem per se, but it's still, you can still build a wonderful startup around it. So first of all, I don't believe in the sort of notion that acha, you should solve for an issue जो तुम्हें बहुत affect कर रहा है at a time. And of course, that's, if you do that, then that's great because you are one of the prime customers. But yes, of course, there are examples where people don't really solve for themselves. They can solve. If you can, however, understand whoever your end user is, whoever that is, that's it. Then that's the game. Basically.
So you got your co-founder from EF.
Yeah.
You were bouncing around multiple ideas.
Yeah.
And then you came across this thing called rounding off the payment for the people to investing that spare change.
Yeah.
And that became Spenny. How did the YC application journey go?
Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting. The predecessor to that particularly as to how we came across this idea is pretty interesting. Because what happened was we were just bouncing around ideas in the fintech space, and I had one starting point. The starting point was that during my days in JPMorgan, a lot of my friends and family around me would keep asking me, "यार कोई stock tip दे दे, यार किधर पैसे invest करना चाहिए ये वो." So there's always people asking कि यार किधर पैसे invest करना चाहिए. That question kept ringing in my head कि यार पैसे कहाँ invest करने चाहिए. And the interesting part was, these are people who are fairly educated, and you would assume that would have access to pretty much all the knowledge and resources available on the internet. So it's not as if they could not do their own research. However, there still existed a problem, which is when it became clear that the problem isn't that there's a lack of knowledge or lack of content available in the net. The problem is that there is a lot of effort required to research. There's a lot of time required to come up with the research, to read the research and to make the decision, because you have too many choices out there right now, and there's a lot of decision fatigue on the end user, and we want to solve for that. We knew that this is a great starting point. Now the question was कि ठीक है, if we want to solve for these things and still make an investment product, तो क्या कर सकते हैं? Around that time, we came across this very interesting research, which is the monkey research. And for people who don't know, essentially this research involves, this was done in US a few years ago in one of the universities, and the research was that a few economics professors, what they did was that they took about 20-30 monkeys in a room and blindfolded them, and they put a dartboard with the name of different stocks in front of the monkeys and asked the monkeys to throw darts at the dartboard. And on the other room, they had a team of financial analysts with all the Bloomberg terminals and all that, with the idea that they will come up with the best basket of stocks in which people should invest. And it turned out that they did a simulation for 30 years, and out of the 30 years, 28 of those years out of 30, the stocks which were picked by those blindfolded monkeys outperformed the stocks which were picked by the financial analysts.
Right.
And that says something. We found that ridiculously funny, but also we found that very interesting, because that means that, you know what do you really want for the people to get started? We wanted an interesting hook to get people to get started into investing. That was the whole idea. So what we did as a response to that was the next day only, we actually put out huge posters which just said, investing so easy, monkeys can do better than you. And we printed these posters and put it out all across Singapore with just the name of the location, Carpenter Street, 3rd floor, and like the time, 3:15 p.m. And we basically had a giant spin wheel with different stocks in it, and with the idea being that you pay $5 and you can spin the wheel once, and you can either get a $1 stock or a $5 stock or a $100 stock. It's a lucky draw game. And we got so many people to turn up, and we got so many people to play that game that we ran out of stocks, literally. That was our first insight. Okay, you know what? If you can create a gamified approach to investing, that's a great starting point. And so we said, all right, what are different gamified approaches? What are passive ways of gamified approaches? And we tried to connect it with daily activity. So one of the ideas that we decided was that, you know what? People like us surf a lot of Instagram and YouTube and feel guilty about it. So what if we can attach a reward to it? Okay? All right, if you scroll your YouTube for more than 30 minutes, we'll invest 100 rupees for you. That is what we started with actually. But we realized that उसमें negative reinforcement हो रहा है, because it's basically punishing the user, and that's not really fun. So we realized that what are the other activities that you do daily? So one of the things was you do a lot of daily transactions. So we said, okay, if you can connect the daily transactions that you do with the investments, then that's a great hook. That's how we came over the special investment product. Okay, every time you make any transaction, we round up the amount to the nearest, whatever multiple that you choose, and we invest it for you automatically. So let's say if you go to a coffee shop and you order a coffee for like 121 rupees, we round it up to 130, and the difference of 9 rupees is something that we invest.
Right.
That was how the basic idea came about, basically.
Awesome. So now you have the idea. You got your co-founder as well.
Yeah.
He's a tech guy.
Yeah.
Who's working on the product, actually making it happen.
Yeah.
And you started with all of those events as well.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
How did the YC thing happen then?
Right. So just about the time when we were sort of building our first MVP was also the time when YC had opened their applications for that particular cohort. And so we out of a women fancy, we decided, okay, we will apply for YC application. By the way, side note, for anyone who is not even like aiming for YC or does not want to apply to YC, should just take a look at the YC form once, because the YC application form forces you to think hard and write down and stuff about your business. This will improve your clarity about how you think about your business and how you think about your customers and how you think about your business model, etc. And also it will give you a lot of food for thought. And so yeah, this is just a side note.
Sahi baat.
So yeah, so for us, we just started applying, for the YC application form, and fortunately we got called up for the interview, and then that's when sort of we decided, okay, this is something serious. We have something good on our hands. Let's make the most out of it. And then after the point of time when the YC's form was submitted and the YC interview was conducted, which is like a gap of about a month for us. For us, it was about a month and a half. That was the point of our highest execution. We tried to, we literally just divided our tasks between the two of us, which is two of us, myself and Gaurav. Gaurav was the builder and I was the seller. Our roles were very defined.
Right.
He would code as much as possible, as fast as possible, and I would try to get users and feedback as much as possible, as fast as possible. And that was sort of our primary roles, and that's what we did really well. And during those 1.5 months, we just kept doing that over and over again up until the day of the interview, and we presented our insights during the interview. And it just turned out, fortunately, it turned out well for us. Yeah. One interesting anecdote that I can probably just share with people, and this is interesting because I think a startup founder's life, and not just me, like pretty much any startup founder's life is it's going to be full of instances where you just have to get creative and try and find out solutions where your back is against the wall. And I think this may be true for you as well. One of the interesting situations that happened was when we got into YC, we got selected by YC, but we applied for our US visas. Both myself and my co-founder applied for the US visas for the first time, and both of our US visas got rejected. Now, the interesting thing was YC was about to start in like pretty much the next week, and we didn't have enough time to then reapply and get another visa. And it was interesting because it would have been really heartbreaking if we got into YC but couldn't get into US because we didn't have the visa.
Right.
And so we really tried our best. हमने बहुत हाथ पैर मारे लेकिन कहीं से कुछ वीजा कुछ मिल नहीं रहा था. And then it just struck us that just out of a whim that we should just mail Shraddha Sharma, because Shraddha Sharma was the founder of Your Story, Shraddha Sharma. She was essentially one of the people involved in the US India Startup Initiative, which was started by Narendra Modi back in I think 2014 or 15 I think. And so just out of a women fancy, we decided, okay, okay, let's just try. Now, mind you, I had never previously, myself or my co-founder, none of us had previously ever spoken to Shraddha Sharma from Your Story at all, ever. And it was funny because I didn't even know her email ID, and we just cold emailed her on all possible email IDs, shraddhasharma@yourstory.com, shraddha.sharma@yourstory.com, etc. And just one of them just struck, and I just sent a very simple email which said, selected by YC, rejected by US visa. Please help. and she got back to us. She actually replied marking somebody from her team and saying that sure, I'll look into this. And sure enough, we actually you can call it like luck, you can call it like turn of events. It was all of these things combined. And we got a slot. And we got a slot, not only did we get a slot, we actually sort of got the visa approved, and we were able to fly to US at a moment's notice. I think that's just an interesting incident, because these are kind of incidents when you feel that, okay, you know what, during the journey, I think बहुत बार होता है ऐसा कि you feel like जुगाड़ लगा के करते रहना and probably just keep throwing darts,
keep moving.
and one of them will hit the goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea.
Awesome, bro. So what is your experience being the best thing that you took away from the YC thing, which isn't really the money, it's more like the experience that you go through.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about that.
100%, man. 100%. So, couple of things. If I had to break down my YC journey, it was majorly into two parts. The first part was essentially extreme amount of mad focus on just the product. Everything else is noise. And so one of the most famous things that Michael Siegel, who is the CEO of YC, says during the first sort of your presentation with everyone is that you need to be coding, as in you need to be building, or you need to be talking to your customers. Anything outside of that you don't have time for. Anything outside of that is just fugazi right now. Just focus on either building the product or talking to the users, and then building the product and talking to the users, and then building the product and talking to the users. That's literally the only thing that you should be doing, and that laser focus actually helped us a lot, give us a direction, what do we really want to build based on actual user insights. The first 2 months with just that, and then weekly check-ins with your managers, as in your YC partners, essentially to just check on the progress and see if you need to take a different direction or just keep going where you are going, etc. Updating them, etc. The last month essentially focuses super heavily on fundraising, sort of demo day, preps you up for what's your story here, what's the big picture, what's the vision, what are the numbers, how do you project, how do you come up with the valuation, how do you come up with the projection numbers, your financial sort of metrics, etc. All of those things. Focus a lot on that. Simple things like pitch deck to complex things like financial projections, all and everything in between, how to pitch, etc. And then you just focus on fundraising a lot. Right. So that was those are the two sort of breakdown of the YC experience basically.
And what other investors do you have?
So other investors? Yeah. So apart from YC, we have 500 startups. We have Cabra VC, and so those three form our sort of largest investors. And then apart from that, we have a host of angel investors.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome, bro. So this is the story of Spenny. How did you get your first 1,000 users, or what strategies have you used to get users?
Yeah. So first 1,000 users, it's literally just pick, hack, shovel, do everything possible to get your first 1,000. You can literally just handpick. One of the interesting things that YC says is do things that don't scale. And that has never been more applicable than your first 100 users or your first 1,000 users, etc. Because you literally have to hustle for your first 1,000 users. What I did in my case,
you're a content creator.
unless you're Ishan Sharma and you have a following of 400,000 plus on YouTube already, and you just can put out a video click a button and then just get users. Unless your name is Ishan Sharma, you have to hustle for your first 1,000 users.
No, I'm just kidding. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता. You have to build something that actually matches with what your audience really wants. 100%. Which by the way we are building, so stay tuned for that. Yes. but anyways. Yes. So. Yeah. What does your day in the life look like?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, day in the life. Essentially, the day is divided into two parts. One is sort of internal, more or less three parts actually. The first being external meetings with all sort of external agencies. So for me, for example, if I just talk of my role, as a founder and as a CEO, my most important roles, obviously you have to be involved in pretty much all the things, but the high impact roles that include first capital, as in fundraising, second hiring, as in getting the right people in the right sort of place, and obviously setting the vision of the roadmap. Those three are the top three things that I need to be doing 100%. Of course, there need to be everything else also, but these three are the top three things. And so a lot of that involves A, deep work, B, external meetings, like meetings with external agencies, and C, meetings or stuff within the team, internal team. Right. So yeah, that's how my day is structured also. Day starts with, I have my own deep work session, and then we have a catch-up team stand-up meetings, basically starts around 10, I have a couple of different teams catch-ups, so 10 and 11, etc. Then you have a bunch of external meetings through the day, up until probably 2 or 3, and then there's another sort of a short period of time when I can sort of do my own work, and then again evening there's once again a catch up with the team, and then you end the day with a deep work session basically.
How big is the team right now?
Around 25 people.
Are you hiring?
Yeah, always. A
Tell
good
the
founder
audience.
is always
Always
hiring.
hiring.
Always hiring, and for multiple roles. So
Right.
yes, please do reach out just reach out to me anywhere. Rathin@SpennyApp.com.
Definitely. All links in description.
Yeah.
Brilliant,
Yeah.
bro. How do you make sure that even if there are competitors in your space,
Yeah.
you have some sort of an advantage? How do you competitor analysis? How do you do that basically?
Yeah. Okay. So competitor analysis is a very interesting thing. First, I would like to really basically this is important to understand that when we have gone through that entire exam system through our childhood and through our college, we always think that there is like going to be a rank system, or there is going to be like basically few spots reserved for the top performers, etc. But it's not the case when it comes to real world, or especially into startups. Basically, I think that I just read this tweet very recently as well, and I think Kunal Shah keeps tweeting about it all the time, that wealth game, if you're playing a wealth game, it's not a zero sum game, everybody can win. And I think that is very much applicable here, is because when you have one of the biggest some mistakes that a lot of founders make, and probably even I have made when I was younger, was that if I find competition in a field, I immediately think that, all right, let's make something else or differentiate yourself from the competitor immediately and create something where there's no competition. However, that's actually wrong, because the field where you have potential competitors is actually a place where there is a lot of potential. That is why there are competitors, which means that market is big enough. And which is the case for more, obviously exceptions exist, but for most cases, the market especially in our space, I can speak for that. The market is still so nascent and so like it's a sunrise market. Things are evolving so fast. Just in the last 2 years, ever since pandemic started, more people have started investing than in the past 10 years combined. And that acceleration is only going to increase for the next 10 years.
Right.
So at this moment, even if there are multiple competitors, it doesn't really affect us so much, because everyone has their own trajectory and their own roadmap. Their target groups are different, their products are slightly different. And let's assume even if everything else is the same, there is so much space for at least 5 different players, 10 different players right now in the Indian market. That is crazy. So yes, at the moment, just think about everyone as collaborators.
Right. Awesome, bro. Thank you so much for coming in here. Or I should say, I came here. Thank you so much for doing this. It was amazing talking to you. All the best for Spenny. All the best for the next fundraise.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much.
Amazing, bro. Amazing. This is the story that I want to share with everyone, right? Like this whole journey of figuring things out, going from college, joining a job, and then quitting that, trying different things out, finding what you like to do, finding the co-founder, coming up with the idea, getting the users, getting YC, and the amazing story that you just shared. This is what is really interesting, I feel, for everyone. So thank you so much. Amazing talking to you. And all the best.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ishan, for coming through, coming to the office. And
it's 12:30 right now in the night.
12:30 in the night, and you're still going strong, brother.
Still going.
Insane.
Like karo, comment karo, subscribe karo, share karo with everyone.
Subscribe to Ishan Sharma's YouTube channel.
And download Spenny.
Yes. Download Spenny, go to Play Store, download Spenny. Or if you are into crypto, then we've just launched a new product, spenny.com/crypto, and register.
18% returns, stable returns. And that was the video. I hope you got to learn something from this. If there's one takeaway that you had, share it with people on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and tag me at Ishan Sharma 7390. Also, let me know in the comment section what did you learn from this whole episode. You can check out the Spenny app with the link in the description. Download it and try it out for yourself. And that's all I have for you today. If you're still watching, just write in the comment section, I watched till the very end. Share this video, hit the like button, subscribe, do all of that. I'll catch you all in the next video.